The Unknown Princess. Hello there, and welcome to a wild and wonderful tale. You have stumbled upon a rather unique story that will take you across the length and breadth of the land, meeting new friends and foes. You never know where the story will lead, twisting and turning along the way. Most stories start out with a deliciously fluffy beginning, a dreamy center, and a happy ending, but this one is quite different. This story centers around a young girl aged 10 who can't remember her past. All she knows is that she is here, and here is a dark, dismal place. Where is here, you ask? Here is a place shrouded in darkness and mystery, Moonshot Island. This is where little Polly resides with her two hideous aunts. Let me try and put into words how grotesque these creatures are. Polly's aunts are two vile women who despise children but are stuck being little Polly's guardians. Why, you say? Why else? Because of money, of course. The old dragon's curse, the goal is too luring, and it corrupts absolutely. They were being paid to feed and water what they called a wart. That was a word they used lightly to describe their niece, who, might I add, was quite an angel. She would obey everything her aunts would ask, and quickly too. No sooner had one blinked than the task was accomplished. All she ever wanted in return was love and affection, but the aunts were absolutely vile. Polly was but a slave in the so-called care of her aunts. Auntie Pearl was a rather wobbly-framed lady who loved nothing more than to eat, and eat she did. Her taste buds did not discriminate when it came to the pleasures of fine food and drink. Now, Auntie Aggie was on the opposite side of the spectrum. Very lean and extremely mean, she would relish in the drink more than the food, and would often drink her fill of various wines and spirits throughout the day. Both their moods would swing and sway, starting the day mostly volatile until the food and drink gods of their stomachs had been appeased. Around dinner time they would both nap, and this was a time of rest for little Polly, but upon waking they would again assume a firm and rancid personality. Then the evening would come around, and they were tired, well-fed, and too drunk to care of anything else, simply passing out and dozing to sleep. This pattern was a Groundhog Day existence for all three of Moonshot Island's inhabitants. Polly would fetch, carry, clean, and sometimes feed the aunties so they remained somewhat docile and tolerable. If Polly strayed from her duties, she was threatened with a clip around the ear and banishment to what they called the box, which was a damp old cage they kept in the basement. It was made of rusted metal and had a big padlock on it to ensure whoever was locked in stayed in until the aunts were ready to let them out. So, as you may assume, Polly didn't act up or speak out of tone to the aunties, as she knew from the one and only time she raised her voice. And may I add, she only did this because one auntie could not hear her. So the other auntie locked her in the cage for talking too loud. Polly often thought they only did it to make an example out of her, ensuring that she kept up a high level of service through bathing her in fear. Fear was always their best tactic, and to keep the fear high they would usually raise a hand as if they were about to strike Polly just to see if she would flinch. This was their twisted way of testing to see if the little girl was scared. Another method of control that they used was to ensure that she had just enough food to keep her working, but not enough so she could run away. Every day they would give her what they labelled to be a vitamin tonic and said Polly had to take it every single day to stay vibrant and healthy. Although when the sludge went down her neck, she got a crippling stomachache. The only kindness they gave was to allow Polly to sleep inside the house on the floor in the attic, which had a leaky roof and was bitterly cold in the winter. Polly's only friend was a spider in the corner of her attic room that she would often talk to on a night before bed. She didn't have time to be scared of creepy crawlies, so she simply talked and made friends with them. This helped her maintain her sanity. The two aunts would go off of the island one day a week and would leave Polly on her own with a long list of grueling chores to do. Polly loved the days when they were off of Moonshot Island, as she could have a little peace from the pandemonium. Let me tell you a little bit about the island they lived on. Moonshot Island was a revered place by anyone on the mainland. It was believed to be an evil place that housed monsters, and to some extent that was true. Nobody from the mainland had any reason to visit the island, so they left it to Father Time and forgot about it. The island itself, upon first inspection, did look quite ominous and dismal, but it had a beautiful side. It had a cornucopia of wildlife in the form of bugs, rodents, rabbits, and other small creatures. It really was a place of life, contrary to popular belief. The house, which was in the center of the island, was extremely old, and having had many repairs over the years, looked like a patchwork quilt. Some parts slightly newer than others, but over recent years the aunts had let it all go to rack and ruin, especially the roof. It could have been an oasis, but the aunts cared not for appearances apart from when they went to the mainland. When they went to the mainland, it was time to get dolled up with nice clothes, jewels, and makeup plastered on with a trowel. They really thought they looked wonderful and would use bottles upon bottles of perfume to cover up their intense garbage-like odor. Time would go by quickly for little Polly, as she didn't have a moment to herself. She was continually busy having to do this, that, and the other to please her aunts, in the hopes that one day she would be allowed to go off of the island and see the city. On a night she would firstly read old books, the pages stained and yellow, and then, before sleep would come, she often peered out of a small gap in the roof and could see the enticing glow of the mainland that looked to be vibrant and teeming with life. Tucking herself in, she would dream of leaving the island and meeting others who she could make friends with and talk to. Today was like any other day on the island, as Polly woke to the screaming alarm of her Aunt Pearl. She threw the covers off and tied a pinny on, ready to cook breakfast for both of the aunties. Practically skimming the stairs, Polly quickly got to the kitchen and fired up the old wooden-fired stove and pulled the huge cast-iron skillet out from under the sink. Tuesday was fried breakfast day, so she had to serve bacon, eggs, black pudding, sausage, fried bread, beans, tomatoes, toast, mushrooms, and whiskies for Aunt Aggie. The aunts expected it to all be on the table by the time they got up, so Polly had 30 minutes to master chef the breakfast, often burning herself from the oil splashing out of the pan. Oil was the only way they would have their breakfast. Polly had got used to the oil popping and crackling, but there would always be the rogue pop that would fire a drop of oil onto her face, so she would wipe her face with a cool cloth quickly to combat the burn. Prepping the breakfast was only one of Polly's main duties. Today, Tuesday was scrubbing the floor day, which took most of the day, and this was to be done in between snacks and dinner, which had to be made upon demand. Although youth was on her side, little Polly would often feel achy to her bones, ready for sleep at any time of the day. After the usual floor scrubbing, night was quickly approaching, and both aunts had fallen asleep on the couch, one passed out from the drinking and the other from the eating. Polly smiled and went to her room to peer out of the gap in the roof as the little spider crawled to have a look too. Roslyn was the name of the spider. Polly would often whisper her deepest thoughts to the little spider.
One day, I'm going to go to that town and get off of this island. It's my dream to go to town and see all those amazing lights.
Dreamily looking through the gap, Polly's eyes glazed over as she dreamed of better days filled with wonder, excitement, and adventure. As a bang from downstairs, probably an ant falling off of the couch, woke Polly from her dream, so she decided to go to bed in preparation for Wednesday, which was Auntie Off-Island Day. Polly fell exhaustedly asleep, dreaming of better times. Waking up at 5 a.m., she raced downstairs to get the aunts' coats ready, and on time both aunts walked past Polly without a word, grabbed their coats, and slammed the door in Polly's face. Little did the aunts know, but Polly had been doing extra chores on the other days so she could have a day to herself and go exploring on the island. She had discovered the amazing wildlife the island was home to. Polly wasn't a threat to the creatures on the island, so they simply got on with their day and wouldn't dash off if Polly was in their immediate vicinity. Animals can sense whether people are a threat or not. Walking out of the back door, Polly's ears pricked up as she heard the diesel engine of the aunt's boat fade into the background, along with the anxiety their presence made. Taking a deep breath into her belly, she imagined all the darkness and upset emotions dispelling from her body. She pulled out a scrap of paper she had torn from an old book and a worn-down pencil one of the aunts had thrown in the bin. The paper had a crude map of the island drawn upon it. She had crossed off various locations on one side of the island: Rabbit Hill, Bugbath Pond, the Big Apple Tree, and the Slippery Hill. All were explored and plundered for any treasure they had. Upon her Wednesday outings, she had discovered the following items: an antique hair clip, a small pirate-style telescope, a small stud earring, and her most prized possession, a green emerald ring. The stone set in the ring was beautiful and shone brightly in the sun. Polly had a secret hiding place that she had created. Basically a hole she dug underneath a rock. She still had undiscovered parts of the island to discover, so she never stayed still for too long. You never know what you'll find when you dare to cover new ground. Venturing on through the wilderness, Polly was determined to seek out any other treasures she could with the little time she had. Knowing the aunts didn't come back until the sun went down, she started trekking to a new location. Squelching through the mud was a pleasure she rarely had. You see, Polly was a child that loved to get dirty but had to stay clean to please her aunts, so she would have to scrub herself clean when she got back but would enjoy things while she could. Taking in every sight, sound and smell the new path had to offer, Polly looked for something that she could draw as the next location on her makeshift map. Her goal was to map out the entire island so she could visit on her Wednesdays off. Not noticing anything of note, she thought she would have to go back, but then, as she went through some quite thick bushes she revealed a hut. Well, this was definitely noteworthy, so she excitedly pulled the paper and pencil out of her pocket and sketched the old-looking shed. The shed was made from wood and had a tin roof with one window. The wood had rotted to some extent and looked quite damp. As she sidestepped around the shed, she noticed a brand new chrome padlock which was locked shut on the door. This was quite bizarre, Polly thought. Why would an old run-down shed have a brand new padlock on it? Upon further inspection, she felt the shed, and although it looked like you could blow it over, it felt immovable. Try as she might, she couldn't break it. The appearance was definitely deceptive. You certainly can't judge a book by its cover, can you? With mystery crossing her eyes, the lure of wanting to know what was inside was high, and little Polly tilted her head like a puppy trying to figure out a way in. Alas, the sun began to lower and her time was nigh. She had to get back to the house and erase all evidence of her outing. Racing back, running through her map, she finally reached the house and went straight to the cleaning room to quickly scrub her boots. After frantically cleaning everything and anything she could, she then scurried to her room to put away her clothes and change into her pajamas. Just as she pulled her legs into the pajama trousers, she heard the familiar sound of the front door swinging open as the aunts, drunk as a skunk, stumbled in and would be demanding a drink before bed. Polly rushed to the dining room where the aunts were already taking off their coats and throwing them onto the floor for Polly to put away. Scooping the coats up, Polly knew the drill and hung them on the coat rack in the corner, then opened the liqueur cabinet to pour 2 sherry glasses full to the top and gave them to the aunts, who belched in her face. Polly went up to bed and repeated the same routine of staring at the bright lights, thinking of the events of the day. She couldn't get the image of the shed she had found out of her head. It was all she could think about, and where would the key be? Climbing into bed, wishing Roslyn a good night, Polly drifted to sleep in hopes that tomorrow would bring something different, something exciting. On the next morning, Polly woke with her hair looking like she had been electrocuted. It was all over the place as she had tossed and turned all night dreaming of the weird garden shed. Grabbing a brush from the side, she dragged it through her hair, pulling the knots out while trying not to hurt herself. Once she was presentable, she got dressed and went to the kitchen to start making pancakes, as it was a Thursday, which meant American-style pancakes with maple syrup and bacon. The aunties were really militaristic and would not stray from their daily routine. So Thursday was pancake day, and for chores, Polly had to wash the aunties' feet and trim their nails, along with cleaning the 5 bathrooms on the property. As Polly soaked the aunties' feet, her gaze momentarily wandered to the side table where she could see multiple items such as papers, paperweights, letter openers, and a big bunch of keys on a huge metal ring. The auntie clipped Polly's ear.
"Keep on track, girl, or it's a thick ear for you."
"Listen to your Auntie Pearl, or it's the cage, remember?"
Yes, Auntie Aggie. I'm sorry, Auntie."
Polly didn't wander off task again, but now her brain was doing overtime as the thought that one of those keys could be the key to the padlock on that ancient-looking garden shed. Her heart skipped a beat with excitement as the mystery ruminated in her head. Why was the shed locked? What was in there? So many questions and so little time. Polly made a decision. She would sneak out of bed and take the keys in the night and go to the shed, try them, then put them back before anyone noticed they were gone. Now, this was very daring for little Polly, and she had never been out in the night on her own, but her curiosity had gotten the best of her, and she was sick and tired of basically being a prisoner. Building her confidence throughout the rest of the day, she eagerly anticipated the new adventure she beheld in her mind. The aunts did their usual routine, and as the sun went down, they demanded red wine. Now, Polly knew when they rolled out the red wine, they would sleep in the next day, so filled their glasses extra full to give herself more time for her nighttime adventure. The aunts downed a bottle and a half, which was plenty to ensure they slept in. Polly helped them to bed and then, like a rocket, shot off downstairs to get the keys. She had to be as stealthy as a ninja if she was to remain undetected by the aunts, even though they were both in a deep sleep and suspected nothing. Tiptoeing through the house, she got to the side table and gently picked up the keys, doing her best to make sure they didn't clang together, and softly put them into her pocket. Sliding her feet into her shoes, she opened the door and was off to the rock where she hid the pencil and map, so she knew for sure where she was going. The moon this night was full, with no clouds in the sky, which helped Polly find her bearings as she scurried along, finally reaching her treasure rock. Plucking the map from underneath, she went to the usual locations and headed in the direction of the old shed. The thought of how new the lock was in comparison to the old shed had really piqued her imagination, and she couldn't wait to see what treasures were held within. After practically sprinting all the way, she finally saw the old shed. It looked even more mysterious and enticing in the light of the moon. Taking no time to spare, Polly started to try all the keys on the keychain, but none of them fit. Taking a deep breath with an air of defeat, she made her way back to the house, questions circling in her mind. Her aunts must have the keys somewhere in the house. She would have to hold her horses and be patient, waiting for the off-island day to explore some more. The week went by slowly, as time usually did when you wanted it to speed up. Needless to say, Polly threw herself into her chores and waited patiently for Wednesday to arrive. On Tuesday night, she did her regular routine and chatted to Rosalind the spider about the adventures of tomorrow. Hardly able to sleep, she just managed to drop off when she heard the familiar diesel engine of their aunt's boat kick up. Taking the hint, she shot out of bed and for the first time in her life went into her auntie's room. Both aunties weirdly slept in the same bedroom. They were quite secretive when they went to bed and would only allow Polly to help them to their bedroom door. She knew that if she left anything in a way that it wasn't before, the aunts would know someone had been in and Polly would be the main suspect. Completely throwing caution to the wind, Polly went in and began her search for the elusive key to the ancient shed. She looked high and low but discovered nothing but old clothes, pictures, jewelry, and useless junk. Pausing for a moment, Polly needed to take a breath and could hear the grandfather clock ticking away in the corner. It went with its hypnotic rhythm. Raising her gaze to the clock, she watched the pendulum swing back and forth. It was a really old clock stood in the corner of the room on its own. The design was unlike anything else in the entire house. Intricate patterns on the old wooden housing. They whirled into leaves and flowers. It really was. Polly's train of thought was broken when, after describing the clock in her mind, she saw it. On the pendulum there was an inset key. A smile widened Polly's face as she advanced towards the clock, opening the large glass door. Grabbing the pendulum made the clock stop, and a flashing light above the ant's bed flashed red, and a siren sounded until Polly let go of the pendulum. Then it stopped. It was quite obvious that the clock was alarmed, but the ant's being out meant she could make a grab for the key. Grabbing the pendulum, Polly endured the sound and popped the key out of its inset place. Then she let go, and the noise, along with the flashing light, stopped. Victory at last. Rushing for her shoes, she couldn't put them on fast enough and raced down the trail for the map. Arriving at the shed, she put the key in the lock.
Ah!
She exclaimed as the padlock popped off. With reservation but excitement at the same time, Polly grabbed the door handle and opened the shed. To her amazement, there was nothing in there. It was completely empty. She kicked a small pebble which was on the ground across the floor of the shed. The pebble shot across the floor, then hit something as Polly's ears pricked up. A metallic echo noise at the back of the shed. Surely it didn't just have one thing inside. Squinting her eyes, she noticed something thin sticking up from the ground. It looked like a thick sewing needle, and upon inspection was stuck in the wooden floor. Polly had a light bulb moment and grabbed the key from the padlock and shoved it in the end of the hole in the top of the needle-like stick. Pulling with all her might, she noticed the floor started to move.
A door!
She had discovered a trapdoor and opened it, revealing darkness below, then a flash of light and a burst of heat with an ungodly noise bellowing from below. The light was a fiery orange color, and the heat was similar to a roaring fire. She needed light and daren't go any further without it. Plunging into pure darkness wasn't an idea she was the least bit comfortable with. So, thinking on her feet, she dashed to the house and grabbed an old oil-filled lamp and raced back to the trapdoor in the shed. Lighting the lamp gave a soft, comforting glow that would easily light the way below. As she shone the lamp over the trapdoor, she noticed a ladder. So she grabbed the lamp tightly and fumbled for the ladder and shimmied her way downwards. The shaft was long and very awkward to traverse, but Polly managed quite well to say she wasn't a master ladder climber. There wasn't much need for it on the island. Finally, reaching the bottom, her oil lamp softly illuminated a long corridor that would periodically light up with a fiery glow accompanied with a rumble. Creeping along the corridor, approaching its end, Polly heard a rhythmic breathing-style noise that sounded extremely scary, but Polly needed to know what mystery the island was housing. Nearing the end of the ominous corridor, Polly turned a corner and felt a blistering heat, followed by a fiery flash. Whatever was at the end of this tunnel was hot and sounded huge. Turning another corner, she noticed something on the ground. It shone and caught her eye. Bending down and thrusting the torch out, she had found a small gold coin. It had a woman's face on one side and a man's on the other. Polly felt her stomach sink and tickle at the same time whilst looking at the faces on the coin. Putting the coin in her pocket, she raised the torch and noticed more gold coins. She scooped them up along her way and filled her pockets. The coins were leading her to the heat and the light. Picking them up one by one, she reached a huge chamber. Then there was a huge flash of light that illuminated the entire chamber, and Polly was stood in awe of what her eyes were witnessing. The bright flashing illuminated a chamber full of gold as far as the eye could see. Waiting for another flash, she decided to look towards where the light was coming from. What she didn't expect was what she saw next. Atop of the mountain of gold sat a creature she had never seen before. She only caught sight of it for a split second, so waited to see it once again. Fire filled the chamber and lit up the creature's face momentarily before plunging the room back into darkness. The creature was a crimson-red color with a collar and chain around its neck. It had what looked like scaly, armorous skin, and on its back were a pair of very thin-looking wings. Its teeth looked to be the same size as Polly and were pearly white. The creature she held before her eyes looked quite menacing, and she didn't want to be anywhere near that fire, so she turned and was about to walk back through the tunnel when a voice bellowed from within the chamber.
"Don't leave."
Polly froze, mostly from fear, as the voice made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end and shot a tingle of electricity up her spine, but out of curiosity, she stopped and turned back to the chamber.
"I know you."
Too timid to answer, Polly snuck to the edge of the corridor and dared step into the chamber, but the voice knew she was there. Too timid to answer, Polly snuck to the edge of the corridor, but she dared not step into the chamber. The voice knew she was there.
"Come into my chamber, child. I will not harm you."
Mumbling, Polly crept forward, allowing her lantern light to spill into the chamber. The small light made the crimson creature's skin slightly visible. Polly's eyes were on stalks as the creature was speaking to her. She had never heard an animal speak before and was excited to talk back, but at the same time quite petrified.
"You are the one child."
Polly finally mustered up the courage to answer.
One what?
"The forgotten one, just like me. You are a prisoner in this place."
Prisoner?
"Yes. You have been snared like me. My parents were taken, and I was left here in this cave with this mountain of gold to guard for those."
By those, do you mean my aunts?
"They who live on the island."
My aunts?
"They aren't your aunts. They are witches."
They're what?
"The witches. They guard me and the gold to make sure I remain hidden."
What? Why?
"Because I am an ancient creature not from this realm. They use me as a guard to make sure nobody finds the gold. They keep me chained here and feed me scraps."
That's awful.
Before my father and mother were taken 10 years ago, they told me of a young human girl who one day may find me. They told me stories of how she would set me free.
What? Well, I'm the only girl on this island.
"You are the one that my father foretold."
But I'm just...
At that moment, the creature smelt the air.
"The witches are coming back and will be here soon. I can smell their stench from miles away."
What, the witches?
"Yes, they are evil. They only brew magic potions to keep you weak. They call it an elixir, but it is more of a fixer."
A fixer?
"Yes, it makes you forget. It makes your mind weak. They try to give it to me, but my fire burns it out. It's the one thing I can get away with."
Why don't you turn them into toast?
"Because they keep me alive by feeding me, and I have a dream to spread these wings one day to escape from the darkness and find my parents."
I have to go. They will be back soon, and if they find out I've been down here, they will...
"Yes, child, go now."
Polly waved at the creature and dashed off. She put the gold back on the floor, as she didn't want the two witches knowing she had been down here. As she closed the trapdoor and locked the shed, thick boat chimney smoke could be seen in the distance, so she sprinted as fast as she could and replaced everything so it looked as though nothing had happened. The witches rolled in and were maddened to find their drinks not already on the table.
Polly!
Yes, Auntie, I'm bringing the drinks. I just fell over.
Stupid girl!
Polly dashed to the aunties with a bottle of brandy.
Fill the glass, you hideous wart!
Polly filled the glass and went straight to bed. As the darkness enveloped the room, Rosalind the spider snuck out to see her bunkmate. Polly told Rosalind everything as she always did, and the little spider sat in her web listening to every word until Polly drifted soundly to sleep. The cycle was about to be broken, and with the help of the huge creature below the island, Polly had hope that freedom was on the horizon. As she woke up the next day, she decided that the elixir the aunties gave her was, as the creature said, poison, so she would hold it in her mouth and spit it out later. Serving the witches their Thursday breakfast, Witch Pearl poured the elixir on the spoon as she had done for years and told Polly to take it, which she did, but then scurried off to the bathroom and spat the contents into the sink. As the liquid circled the plug hole, it fizzled and took a lot of water to swill it away. Getting on with her chores, she couldn't wait for next Wednesday so she could visit the creature below the island. Monday arrived and all was as it had ever been, and Polly was laboring away at a hefty chores list when she stopped as an image flashed through her mind. A face of a man. He had brown hair and a mustache. She couldn't remember seeing a man before, only in the aunties' books. Shrugging her shoulders, she carried on, but pondered who the man was. At long last, Wednesday arrived again, and the witches went away while Polly went to visit the creature. Holding the lantern out into the chamber, she could see the creature stretched and fire shot from its nostrils.
Ah, you're back, my little friend.
Yes.
There was a slight silence as the creature got to its feet and outstretched its wings.
I've been asleep for 2 days.
Wow. I couldn't wait to come and see you again. What else can you tell me about why you're here or about the witches?
Well, it's all a long tale.
Polly fashioned a chair out of the gold coins and made herself somewhat comfortable.
I am a dragon. I come from a long line of dragons that made a pact to protect the kingdom.
Kingdom?
Yes, my father told me we lived in harmony with the humans, but the king and queen were deceived by their most trusted advisor who was working for their enemies. A lord took the kingdom for his own, and the dragons were imprisoned, hunted, or killed. The remaining dragons were then only used to guard hoards of gold like this one. The gold here belongs to Lord Tirith. It was stolen from the king and queen.
What happened to the king and queen?
Nobody knows, but they had a daughter. She was very young.
Polly's heart jumped a beat as she looked down with tears in her eyes. As a single tear fell on a gold coin with the man's face on the coin facing up, Polly looked at the coin.
That's him.
Who?
The man from my vision.
Her vision was crystal clear, and the man on the golden coin had a mustache and was the one from her vision she had had the other day.
I know this man from somewhere. His image came to my mind.
That's the king.
Why would I know who he is? I'm only 10.
The kingdom dispersed 9 years ago. so it's possible your mind remembers him, as his face was known to all citizens of Drizonia.
This doesn't make sense, so I could be a citizen.
Come on, my young friend, can't you put this together? You very well may be the missing princess.
What?
Yes,
But why keep me?
you have royalty in your blood.
But I'm a prisoner here.
That's as much as I know, but I want to make a pact with you.
With me?
Yes.
What for?
Free me, and I'll get us both off this wretched island for good.
I will, but how?
You'll have to get this chain off of my neck, and I will fly.
How can I get the chain off of your neck?
There is a key that opens it. The thin witch has it tied around her neck. She shows it to me to taunt me.
Oh, okay, I'll get the key and I'll take it off, but you're too big to fit through this door.
Leave that one to me. Now, go and get the key.
Polly walked up to the creature and held out her hand in a gesture to shake on the deal. The dragon didn't have a clue as to what the human was doing.
It's a sign of friendship and that we will both honor the pact.
I don't have a hand, but here is a claw.
Stretching out a jet-black claw on one of the dragon's huge toes. Polly shook it.
By the way, my name's Polly.
I know.
How?
The witches talk of you often and how you must not find out about me. My name is Gordoth.
With that, they parted company, and Polly retraced every step to make sure no clue was left for the evil witches. Pearl and Aggie came in drunk again as per usual, and Polly helped them to their room, their breaths acidic. It could have cut through walls as they each intentionally breathed on Polly, laughing in her face as they did before slamming their bedroom door. Polly went to her bedroom thinking of a plan to get the elusive key from Witch Aggie's neck. Rosalind the spider dropped down from her web to listen to Polly as she told her of the events that had transpired. Falling fast asleep, Polly tossed and turned and was quite perturbed as she dreamt of things she hadn't dreamt of before. Images flashed through her mind. It was as though memories were flooding back into her awareness. The man and woman's faces upon the gold coins were in her mind, and flying dragons that wham! She woke up to find Witch Aggie and Pearl staring at her. Witch Pearl stuck her arm out and the little spider Rosalind, who had been Polly's faithful companion, crawled onto her hand. Pearl held the spider to her ear.
Yes, my pretty, thank you. It appears you've been out of the house when we go off of the island. What's wrong? Did you think this little spider was yours? No, she's mine. Scarlet, she is called.
Aunt Pearl placed the spider on her head, and it crawled into the nest like hair.
So you like to go around the island, do you? And we know you've been to see Gordoth.
What? No!
Polly protested, but it was too late.
To the cage.
I liked having a slave, but now she knows the truth. We have to lock her away.
Can't we just eat her and tell the master we lost her?
No, he needs her.
Aggie stomped her foot hard in defiance.
Grab her.
Aggie grabbed Polly with a vice-like grip and dragged her kicking and screaming to the basement and locked her in the rusty cage. She was in trouble now, and big time. A day went by as little Polly sat there lonely and scared. Upon the new day, the door swung open.
We're sick of getting our own food and drink, so we're going to let you out, but you have to wear this collar.
Presented to Polly was a collar and chain. Polly conceded, as anything was better than the rusty cage with the damp floor. Clamping the collar around her neck, Polly looked to the floor in utter defeat. She felt as though this was it. She had failed herself and Goddard. She was then dragged to the kitchen, and one end of the chain was attached to the metal loop that was bolted into the floor.
You have enough chain to walk around the house and do your chores, and that's it.
Which Aggie kicked Polly to the floor, and she fell hard, grazing her knees. Days went by as the usual routines passed, and Polly tried to come up with some sort of plan to combat her situation, but couldn't think of anything. Both her and Gordoth's keys were now dangling around Aggie's neck. Freedom was so close, yet so far. Friday night had come around, and it was Polly's 11th birthday, so the witches decided as a special treat they would drink more than usual, and both passed out in the living room. Their snores were so loud that the people on the mainland could probably hear them. This was Polly's one and only chance to grab the keys and make a run for it. But as she inched closer to Aggie, she woke up. But Polly had had a stroke of genius. She had decided to mix their sherry with the so-called vitamin elixir they force-fed her for years. Pretending she was merely offering Aggie another sherry, Polly turned and waited. Nothing happened, just the familiar sound of snoring. Upon turning back to Aggie, she noticed she had fallen asleep again, so she reached for the key, only to have Aggie wake and grab her hand as Polly had clutched the keys. Polly violently pulled the keys from her neck, and just as she was about to alert Pearl, her face changed to green. Aggie ran to the bathroom. The elixir had obviously kicked in, along with the copious amounts of alcohol, and sent Aggie to the bathroom. Polly quickly undid the neck collar and raced upstairs, got the clock pendulum key, which squawked and woke Pearl up, who was very drunk and disorientated. On seeing Polly running past her, she tried to grab her but failed due to the alcohol, and then turned green and ran to the bathroom too. Polly sprinted to the shed, opened the trapdoor, and ran to the chamber where Gordoth was.
I have the key. Let's go.
Gordoth smiled as Polly undid the neck collar.
Time to get away from here.
Gordoth went to the doorway, and in the blink of an eye shrank to the size of a large rat.
Wow! Why couldn't you get out of here if you could do that?
The collar was magic. It blocked my ability. Now come on, let's go.
Polly grabbed Gordoth and ran along the corridor. Gordoth then jumped out of little Polly's hands, flew up the shaft into the shed, swiftly followed by Polly, who was doing her best to keep up. They both burst into the moonlight and breathed in the crisp night air. Gordoth grew to half his normal size and gestured for Polly to get on his back. Gingerly hopping on, Polly grabbed a hold of the scales along Gordoth's back.
Hold on, I'm pretty new to this.
The young dragon hadn't really flown before. He had only hovered in the chamber to keep his wings strong, so this was a new experience for the both of them. As they hovered above the ground, they could taste freedom. Gordoth flew higher and higher, and could see the two witches practically falling over each other at the front door of the house. They were waving their arms, ranting and raving at Polly and Gordoth. Doing a circle around the island, Gordoth breathed in deeply and then shot fire onto the house, and the witches did their best to use magic to put out the flames. Gordoth then shot off, flying towards the mainland. They had been flying for about 10 minutes when a thunderbolt flew past their heads. Not knowing how a horizontal thunderbolt could even happen, Polly looked at the night sky behind them. What she witnessed she couldn't believe. Aggie and Pearl were both in hot pursuit, flying on broomsticks with wands in hand, firing random spells at Polly and Gordoth.
Gordoth, it's the witches. They're trying to stop us.
Hold on tight, little one. I'm going to try something.
Flapping his wings ferociously fast, Gordoth flew in a huge circle and did a somersault in the air, and was now above the witches. They were toast. Taking in a huge breath, Gordoth incinerated the brooms the witches were riding on with most of their hair as they plummeted and landed in a lake. Polly laughed along with Gordoth in triumph. The day was finally working in their favor, and it wasn't before time either. Flying for only 15 more minutes, the pair decided that it was time to land and rest up for the night before pursuing their newfound freedom in the morning. Landing with a thud next to a stream, they both took a drink and looked for somewhere to shelter for the night. Luckily, there was a cave quite nearby, and as a double bonus, it was vacant, so they went in, and Polly gathered wood to build a fire. Gordoth spat out a small flame, which took to the wood and lit a fire immediately. Settling down, they both fell asleep. It had been a quite eventful day filled with energy-expending adventure, so it was not surprising that their aching bodies needed some much-deserved rest and recuperation. Never had a morning felt so fresh, with the air full of excitement, accompanied by the scent of the lush green countryside. Polly stirred and her muscles twitched to life as she opened her eyes momentarily in disbelief about where she was and the hulking dragon that lay opposite her. Taking a moment to stretch, she mulled over the events of the previous day. Gordoth rolled over onto his back as he craved more slumber. It was his first night flight and extremely exhausting. Deciding to get up and venture out for breakfast, Polly dusted herself off and ran her fingers through her now bedraggled, greasy hair and walked outside the cave. The world she held before her seemed much brighter, full of life and mystery. A new world ready to be explored. A weight had been lifted off of her shoulders, and she felt lighter than a feather, but still rather achy from her adventures. Walking along the forest path, she found a river that was teeming with fish, so she decided to catch some for her and Gordoth. A young girl and dragon, may I add, needed their strength if they were to create a new life. With the knowledge she had garnered from reading books at the witch's house, she knew that humans could be creative and over time had developed implements for hunting and gathering foods. Fashioning a spear, she tried multiple times to catch a fish, but to no avail. It looked far easier in theory than to practice. But being a persistent little creature, Polly managed to snare 5 fish and carried them to the cave where the mere scent tickled Gordoth's nostrils just enough to make him flip over and stretch.
I found us some breakfast.
Excellent.
I'll have one and you take the rest.
Impaling the fish on the spear, she propped the stick over the fire. Gordoth spat another fireball onto the embers as Polly fed the fire more wood. In no time whatsoever, the fish were smelling beautiful as their stomachs began to let them know it really was time to eat. In one mouthful, Gordoth swallowed the fish and gave a sizable belch afterwards. Polly, on the other hand, had to wait for the food to cool and pick the meat a little at a time, making sure to not swallow any bones. The second they were finished with breakfast, they heard the all-too-familiar voice of Pearl and Aggie, which screeched throughout the cave. Both Gordoth and Polly recoiled backwards as they thought they had seen the last of those two. The screeching stopped, and only Pearl could be heard, her voice as grating as ever.
Come now, Gordoth. We fed you for years. Give us the girl, and you can go free. But if you don't, we'll use our magic to trap you once more.
Gordoth looked as though he was thinking about it, which sent Polly's anxiety levels through the roof. First the betrayal of Roslyn the spider, and now Gordoth? Waiting with bated breath, Polly swallowed, not knowing whether to run and hide or to stay put. The silent atmosphere was tense as Gordoth stared at Polly. Then he winked one of his eyes as some sort of signal, but a signal to what? Gordoth cleared his throat and spoke to the witches.
For this exchange, you will have to tell me the truth.
What truth?
Who is this girl, and why is she in your care?
A brief silence followed by the witches whispering as they conferred with each other.
Fine, you can have the truth. The girl is in fact the unknown princess, and we are keeping her for Lord Tirith. There, happy?
Why keep the girl for Tirith?
Because she has royal blood.
And?
The witches were getting frustrated and didn't want to reveal the truth, but now had nothing else to bargain with.
Her blood, when matured naturally through time, will be the key to eternal life. We have to keep her until her 16th birthday, then immortality will be hers. It's in all of her bloodline. We only have 5 more years of service, so give her back and nobody gets hurt.
Polly's jaw dropped.
Immortal?
Yes, your royal blood allows you to live forever as long as you don't get harmed or injured.
What about my parents?
Good question.
Clearing his throat, Gordoth asked more questions.
What of the girl's parents and mine?
All destroyed in the Great War, and yours we don't know.
Polly's eyes filled with tears as Gordoth put his tail around her to provide some form of comfort.
Now hand over the girl.
Gordoth gestured with his head for Polly to climb on his back.
Okay, I will bring her out.
No tricks.
Breathing in deep, Gordoth charged for the cave entrance and burst out with tremendous speed, surprising both of the witches as he soared into the air. Thinking they had got away unscathed, they flew past, but one of the witches threw some sort of potion at them, and it cracked on Polly's head, knocking her backwards off of Gordoth's back and out cold. The dragon was quite skilled at using his tail and managed to scoop little Polly out of the air and fly in a manic fashion until they were well out of range of the witches. Perching atop of a mountain, Gordoth gently placed Polly on the ground and didn't know what to do. She just lay there, motionless and barely breathing. All he could do was guard her and wait to see if she would come around. 3 days Gordoth watched over her. Upon the 4th day, Polly blinked rapidly, then opened her eyes, and all she could see was crimson red and nothing else. Try as she might, she couldn't move and felt paralyzed. Then she felt a warm sensation in her legs which eased and calmed her racing brain. Deciding not to panic, she let go of the thoughts in her head and sensations in her body. It was as if someone had waved a magic wand, because the moment she allowed herself to relax was the moment she could feel her body come back to life. Movement was sluggish and small, but it was there. Trying to focus her eyes, she noticed the crimson had shapes. The shapes were the scales of Godoth. He had wrapped his entire body around her to keep her shielded from the elements and provide warmth. Murmuring and trying to speak, signaled to Godoth that she was ready to be taken from the cocoon he had kindly made, and so he uncoiled himself to view his sick patient. Polly tried to sit up, but found it extremely difficult, so Godoth gave her his humongous paw, to which she pulled herself up.
Oh, what happened?
You were hit by what I think was a paralysis potion. They used something similar on my parents before they took them away. I feared for your life and didn't know whether you would come back to me.
Thank you for taking care of me. What do we do now?
The pair paused for thought.
We are free, and should do as free creatures do, live for ourselves and off of the land.
Godoth shrank to the size of a small rat again. Leaping into Polly's lap, they sat talking for hours and decided tomorrow would be the start of a new adventure. As time rolled by and years passed, the dynamic duo of Polly and Godoth lived in peace off of the land, doing their best not to bother anyone and taking only what they needed to thrive off of the land. It was nearing Polly's 16th birthday, and so, as a treat, Godoth had flown them to a remote tropical island for a holiday, and also because the island grew the finest coconuts and bananas. It was a tropical paradise which was inhabited by nothing more than animals who could roam free, not bothering anyone or anything. Laying on the beach, taking in the sun, they chatted away as they often did, while allowing themselves to absorb the sun's comforting rays. They both reminisced about the times they had had and couldn't believe where they had come from and gotten to in the 5 short years they were together. Godoth suddenly went quiet for a moment.
Hey, what's wrong?
My parents, they may still be out there.
Yes, they may be. We should try and find them.
Really?
Of course. I'm surprised we didn't start to look sooner. The freedom we gained was all-encompassing, and I got distracted over these years, but always had the thought of them in the back of my mind. I guess I always imagined them finding us. They must have been trapped like we were.
Where could we start?
Well, the only ones who know anything about them were the witches, and last time they said they were taken, but who by? We don't know, do we? But I know what we do have. A big bargaining chip.
Do we?
Yes.
What?
Me, of course. I was only kept alive for my royal blood, which is precious to this Lord Tirith, who is probably searching the length and breadth of the land for me.
What are you trying to tell me?
I'll offer my blood in exchange for the location of your parents.
You can't do that.
Yes, I can.
The situation was complex and required much thought, as it put the pair in peril. If anything were to go wrong, they definitely needed to have a plan, and for that plan to be executed flawlessly. Soaking up the sun, they both wondered how they might broach the situation, as it was draped in complexity.
We have to go back to the witches.
Why?
Although they don't know where your parents are, they do know where this Lord Tirith is, and he's the one who gives the orders and wants my blood. I'll be 16 soon. Even if something goes wrong, he has to keep me until my birthday.
Yes, but we have to be careful. We enjoy the freedom we have and don't want it to be robbed from us once more.
Listen, let's just sit back and enjoy the island for today, then set out to travel back tomorrow to Moonshot Island, okay?
The clear blue sea was calming, sun's rays comforting, and light breeze a perfect accompaniment for them to relax before they set out once again on another quite terrifying adventure. The morning came and they slept relatively comfortably, even knowing the mammoth task they held before them. The sun rose on the picturesque island as they tucked into the bountiful fruit the island so kindly provided. Once their bellies were suitably full, they set back off to Moonshot Island, a place they hadn't seen for 5 years. The familiar island came into view with the house looking in a state of disrepair from the fire damage caused by Gordoth as a farewell present to the witches. Deciding to try and go undetected, they landed in the water and swam to the far side of the island and touched down near the prison Gordoth was all too familiar with. Shrinking himself down, Gordoth could now fit into Polly's pocket and flew in, nestling himself down.
Let's tell them we went separate ways, and you got here via a boat on the other side of the island. That way, if you need the element of surprise, I'm in here.
Polly nodded in agreement and set out for the house. Approaching the door, she had a sharp twinge of anxiety that shuddered throughout her entire body. Her feet became wobbly, not wanting to go any further, but she had to do it for her friend. Knocking on the door, she waited for quite some time until the familiar, yet not so familiar face of Witch Pearl answered the door.
Who's there?
Polly couldn't believe what she was seeing. The witch didn't have any eyes, as she fumbled for the door to maintain stability.
It's me, Polly.
Polly? Why've you come here? You've done enough damage. Aggie?
Yelling for her sister, Pearl's face was a picture of confusion as to why the girl would turn up on her doorstep. Aggie walked up to Pearl and put her hand on her shoulder.
I'm here.
Look.
Aggie still had both of her eyes, but one of her hands was missing. Not beating around the bush, Polly asked,
What happened to your eyes and your hand?
This is the punishment we got from Lord Tirith for losing you. He took from us.
What a monster!
Don't talk of the Lord like that. He's our ruler. He is all-powerful, and what he's taken he can give back, and promise to return them should we ever track you down, and try we have, but we know you never stay in one place, do you?
You've been trying to track me down?
Yes, every day since you left outside that cave.
Well, I'm here.
Why?
I wanted to offer you a deal.
What kind of deal?
Well, I'm nearly 16 and know that Lord Tirith wants my blood, and so I'm willing to trade for information.
What information?
I want to know where Gordoth's parents are.
Ah, the infernal dragon. We already told you, we don't know.
Yes, but Lord Tirith will.
They all paused in a stalemate. The silence was sickening. Aggie whispered into Pearl's ear, and all Pearl did was nod.
We will take you to the Lord, but you have to cooperate. Oh, and where is the dragon?
He's looking for his parents. I wanted to help him, so thought this would be an easy trade.
We leave tomorrow. Come, you can have your old room.
Polly shuddered with the thought of stepping foot in that old room, so declined and said she would return in the morning. Parting ways, the witches locked the house, and Polly walked into the dense forest where she had trodden many years ago. On her way, she saw the rock where she used to hide her treasures and wondered if they were still there underneath. To her surprise, the green emerald ring, telescope, and small earring stud were still there, along with what she assumed was the remnants of the map she had made all those years ago. She put the ring on her finger, which now fitted perfectly. When she found it, it didn't fit, but she was older and her hands bigger. It fit perfectly. Shoving the rest in her pocket, she set off to the far side of the island, where she had made a fire with the help of her pocket-sized companion, Gordoth. She talked herself to sleep, and then was woken up with two men binding her hands and feet together. She struggled as they stood her on her feet.
Who are you?
We have been summoned by the Lord to escort you to the kingdom. These bindings are for your own protection.
How does that make sense?
Quiet.
Being very forceful, the men violently took Polly to the witch's house and knocked on the door. Opening the door, Aggie and Pearl were smiling like Cheshire cats, gloating in their genius.
Now then, my dear, you'll see the Lord and we'll be rid of you.
Turning to the guards, Aggie held out her hand and Pearl did the same. The guards placed two eyes in Pearl's outstretched hands and a severed hand into Aggie's. The witches put their body parts back into their rightful homes, and with a few drops from a vial Pearl had in her pocket, they fused back into place, making them complete again.
Enjoy the rest of your life, dear. All 3 weeks of it.
What do you mean? They need me.
They don't need you, you silly little wart. They need your blood.
Cackling away, the witches slammed the door and were glad to be rid of the wart. The two men dragged Polly to the boat and threw her on. She scrambled to get on a seat at the back of the boat as the men started up the diesel engine, and away they went. Reaching the mainland was only a 20-minute ride, and Polly didn't know what to do or say. She peered into her pocket where Gordoth was hiding, and he looked at her and whispered,
You want me to get us out of here? It's getting a little dangerous.
No, hold on.
Who are you talking to, girl?
Nobody, just myself.
Stupid girl.
When the ship reached the mainland, the men took Polly to a horse and cart and shoved her into the carriage, making sure to draw the curtains so wandering eyes couldn't peer in and Polly couldn't see out. The ride took 2 days, but finally, with a jolt, they stopped in their tracks. The men, who had no empathy whatsoever, clasped Polly's arm and dragged her from out of the carriage, pulling her into the sunlight, which temporarily blinded her. Once her eyes adjusted, she was in a state of shock. They were stood looking at a gigantic waterfall, the water crashing onto the rocks below and pooling towards their feet. One of the men pulled a small trumpet from his pocket and blew on it hard, to which a high-pitched squeal poured out, echoing behind the majestic waterfall. Like theatre curtains, the water parted and rocks behind moved, revealing a doorway to another world. Pushing Polly, the men weren't interested in letting her take in the sights. They simply wanted to perform their duties and didn't deviate from their task in the slightest. They pushed her and she fell, thinking she would be submerged in the water. She fell hard, as though the water was a concrete floor.
Get up.
She got to her feet and walked across the water towards the portal to another world, and without hesitation went through. The moment the three entered, the rocks closed behind them and another waterfall on the mirroring side opened, allowing them passage through. They walked over a practically identical pool of water towards a carriage that was waiting for them.
In.
Polly climbed in, not giving any resistance to the brutally violent men who were ushering her towards the Lord. 2 nights passed as they trekked across the unknown territory. As the carriage went from dirt road to cobbled street, Polly could feel the vibrations from the unstable road traveling through her entire body as she knew she must be closer to the destination. Opening the door, the man who had taken her from Moonshot Island was now acting completely different and asked if she needed assistance exiting the carriage, even offering an arm for support. Polly refused due to the brutal treatment she had already received, and she didn't know whether he was being genuine or false. Stepping out onto the cobbled street, she beheld a huge castle with small houses dotted around it. The castle was much like the one from the storybook she had read as a child. It had orange tiles on the turret roofs, which pointed towards the sky. The rest of the castle was made of pure stone. It was a magnificent sight to see, literally something out of a fairy tale. Trying to take in the sights, sounds, and smells, she then noticed the villagers who were going about their business buying and selling. The town surrounding the castle was bustling with life and immaculately clean. It looked as though it had been freshly built.
This way, please, madame.
Feeling quite perturbed, Polly couldn't understand why the man was now treating her so nicely. The townspeople barely batted an eyelid to Polly's presence and simply got on with their own business. In front of Polly was a huge wooden door with 2 guards in front of it. The moment they saw Polly, they signaled for the door to be opened. As the doors opened, they revealed an inner courtyard with workmen and other townspeople preparing for something. They were hanging banners and setting tables up with food and the like. Polly was ushered up a stone staircase and into a huge hall with oak dark brown wooden flooring running towards a ornate-looking chair with a red velvet seat.
The Lord will be with you shortly, and I suggest you keep eye contact to a minimum. He doesn't like people who are unworthy looking at him.
Unworthy? I'm the princess.
The who?
At that precise moment, Lord Tirith, accompanied by a Weasley-looking servant, entered the room, walking straight past Polly and the guard as if they didn't exist. Lord Tirith was a very gaunt man with a goatee mustache framing his lips. His eyes were like those of a vulture, pale and blue, constantly darting in different directions as if his brain couldn't stop overthinking.
Bring the girl forth and show her to me.
The guard gently hooked Polly under the arm and took her towards Lord Tirith, who had now sat down on his kingly throne.
Have you treated the girl well?
Yes, my lord, we escorted her in comfort and with ease.
Polly's face turned from neutral to rage.
No, you haven't. You've manhandled me all the way.
Lord Tirith looked at the guard with a steely gaze.
Is this true, sir?
No, my lord, I would never disobey an order. It's not true.
Turning back to Polly, the Lord was about to speak when she cut him off.
I've been pushed, thrown, poked and prodded the whole way.
I will not suffer this insolence.
Lord Tirith rose from his seat and walked up to the guard and stood nearly on his toes, staring into his face. The guard, in response, shriveled, retracting his neck and looking towards the floor.
My lord, we had to restrain her, and she wasn't going to come easily. I'm very sorry, my lord.
The guard knelt down and bowed his head, tears almost streaming from his eyes. It looked to Polly as if the man was petrified for his life. The Lord must have been ruling the people like a tyrant.
Away and out of my sight. Today I have been most kind to not punish you.
Swiftly scurrying away, the guard couldn't get out of the door fast enough, leaving Polly with the Lord and the weasel. Lord Tirith sat back down and gave a huge sigh.
Ah, now, my dear, I have waited a long time to see you. I believe you know why you are here.
My blood?
Lord Tirith's face flattened and softened a little.
So you are well aware of the power it contains.
Yes, immortality.
Smiling, Lord Tirith had a sadistic look on his face.
Humans have longed for the ability to live forever, and I am no exception. I have searched high and low upon my travels, and all paths lead to your bloodline. Your parents, unfortunately, wouldn't allow me to study them and create an elixir, but you have no choice. You are my prisoner.
I will work with you and make you a deal.
The Lord cackled with maniacal laughter.
You aren't in a position to make deals, and with your 16th birthday fastly approaching, I merely need to keep you for a week longer, and then the secrets will be mine.
Why can't we just work things out together?
Not we, my dear, will work things out and obtain immortality. Now I grow tiresome of your presence. It reminds me of when your mother and father tried to talk to me before my dragon foolishly incinerated them.
What?
Oh, yes, that's how your parents went. So the bloodline couldn't be studied, but there you were in your crib when I ordered the 2 witches to keep you until your 16th birthday, and they couldn't even do that.
You're a monster and won't get away with this.
Won't? Oh, foolish, foolish child. I am getting away with this, and you walk straight into my hands. Now, take her to the coal dungeon and leave her in there for now. Make sure you feed and water it. She has to last 1 more week, then the immortal blood will be mature enough for harvesting.
As the weasel man grabbed Polly, her eyes welled up with tears and heart with rage. The weasel man dragged Polly down 3 flights of stone steps into the dark underbelly of the castle where the coal storage room was. Shoving Polly into the storage room, she fell onto a huge mound of coal, the dust going everywhere. Trying to get to her feet, she stumbled over the pieces of coal scattered all over the floor. The room would have been in total darkness if it weren't for 2 windows, one on the door and another on the wall at the side. A trickle of candlelight spilled into the room and barely illuminated it. The other window had a dull glow too. Polly decided to go and inspect the door and pulled herself up on the bars so she could peek out. On inspection, she could see a guard, spear in hand, standing at the side of the door with his head bowed and eyes shut. She decided not to bother him for now and inspect the other window so she could weigh up her options. Turning back into the room, she looked at the mountain of coal she would have to climb to reach the other window on the side wall. Taking a deep belly breath, she started her ascent up the huge coal mountain. After falling multiple times and sinking others, she finally managed to reach the window on the wall and grab the bars to stabilize herself. Peering into the adjoining room, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. On one side of the room lay a huge dragon, and on the other a small creature Polly hadn't seen before. Just as she was about to call to the dragon, a flashing light on the wall, accompanied by a bell, began to sound. The small creature nearly jumped through the roof and started to chanter to itself.
Come on, Eliza. They need the heat.
The dragon barely stirred until the little creature prodded it with a shovel. The dragon stretched and stood in the very cramped space. The creature jumped into action and started shoveling coal into a huge funnel as the dragon opened its mouth and breathed fire into the funnel, igniting the coal. This happened until the bell and light stopped. The little creature wiped sweat off of its brow and sat, shovel in hand.
Thank you, Eliza. You're a star.
The dragon gave out an audible sigh and laid on the floor, looking quite defeated.
Now, come on, lassie. It's all right. We'll get out of here one day. Tirith says we only have a year's more service and we can go free.
The dragon didn't look impressed at all, as it turned its head to get comfortable. Polly called out,
Hey, you!
Again the little creature nearly jumped through the roof while the dragon simply turned its head, and they both looked in Polly's direction. The small creature screwed up its face.
So you're the new coal goblin, are you?
What?
Coal goblin. That's why you're in the coal store, isn't it?
No, I'm a prisoner.
Prisoner? Yeah, like I said, a coal goblin. Get shoveling and put the coal through the hatch.
Hatch?
On the floor. No idea why you're up there.
Polly slid down the mountainous mound of coal and dug around, trying to find the elusive hatch in the darkness. After fumbling through the coal, she finally found a hatch and opened it, revealing the small creature's face.
See? I told you. Now get a shoveling and refill my coal reserves.
Wait.
Wait what? Come on, we need to heat the bathhouse upstairs. If we don't heat the bathhouse, we will get more time on our sentence.
Sentence?
Yeah, you know, you'll get time too. Now come on, we have to get this show on the road. I'm Gilbert, and I'm a goblin. Look, you look a little different. Are you a human? I can't see as you're covered in coal.
Yes, I'm a human. I'm the princess of the last king and queen.
Yeah, you'll tell me anything. Now get to work.
I want to talk to your dragon.
Eliza, why?
Because she might be able to tell me what happened to my friend's parents.
What? Shut up and...
Before they could finish talking, the light and bell squawked.
Start shoveling the coal. We need to fill the funnel.
Only if you let me talk to the dragon.
Gilbert started to get anxious as Polly didn't move any coal.
Come on, I don't want more time on my sentence.
Only if I can talk to the dragon.
All right, but after the coal, now come on.
Polly pushed the coal through the small door to which Gilbert shoveled it into the funnel, and the dragon incinerated it. Once all the noise stopped, Gilbert sat and whispered to the dragon, who then proceeded to walk over to the small hatch.
Why do you want to talk to me?
I don't, but my friend does.
Polly pulled Gordoth out of her pocket and shoved him through the hatch. The moment the dragon saw Gordoth, it started to cry.
My son.
Mother.
Little Gordoth flew to the huge dragon and landed on her shoulder, nestling in. They both didn't say anything, just embraced each other.
Mother, what happened?
Me and your father were taken to be put to service for Lord Tirith. It was that, or death. We were promised to be reunited after we served the Lord for years.
Where is my father?
That I do not know, my son.
We need to be free.
We have to serve the Lord, or he will destroy us.
He will destroy you anyway. He Made me guard gold, but I got free.
Free?
Yes, me and Polly lived freely. He didn't find us.
The room went silent as they all went into deep thought. We can't get out of here. He has an army. They will hunt us down and not stop.
What's better, to stay here, or at least try to escape and be free?
Godoth pleaded with his mother, who was coming around to the idea but couldn't fathom how they could escape. Polly decided to squeeze through the little doorway, so she grazed her arms and legs but finally got in.
Pleased to meet you, Gilbert and Eliza.
Son, who is this?
This is Polly. She rescued me from the golden hoard I guarded. She's also known as the Unknown Princess.
What? So you weren't kidding? You're the princess and true ruler of the throne? The only descendant left?
Yes.
Well, we need to return you to your rightful place on the throne.
Polly took a moment.
I don't want to be a queen. I just want my freedom and to free everyone else.
And how do you intend on doing that if you aren't in power?
I don't know.
We have to escape, and then we can think about how to free everyone else from the evil lord's tyrannical reign.
We can't. We need to serve our time.
He will destroy you both when you can't do your jobs anymore. What evidence do you have that he's going to set you free?
Well, we don't have any. They all looked at each other and agreed that freedom now was more important than false promises of an evil lord.
But how are we going to get out of here?
Confusion was displayed all over their faces. They were all quite perplexed as to how they would even get to the surface, never mind outside of the castle. Gilbert the Goblin stepped forward.
My father served your parents, and I'd be honored to do the same, so let's fire it up.
The small goblin started shoveling coal like there was no tomorrow.
What are you doing?
We're gonna set this place alight. It's gonna get really warm in here. Grab some coal and that wood over there and throw it into the funnel. Let's melt these pipes. We have 2 dragons. Come on, 2 times the power. Let's go.
They all stuffed the funnel full of fuel.
This will create a good diversion so we can escape.
Gilbert then took his shovel and broke the collar off of Eliza's neck.
Right, Godoth and Eliza, fire the tunnel as much as you can, and it will evaporate that funnel and bathhouse above with fire.
Mother and son stood facing the funnel and breathed fire into the funnel, which at first took the heat, but then began to steam and melt. The bell and alarm went crazy.
The people in the bathhouse must be trying to tell us to stop. That means it's working. Now we need to get out of here.
They heard the guard in the coal store where Polly had come from.
Where is she? She's escaped.
Godoth, knock the door down.
Godoth easily barged the door open, nearly knocking it off of its hinges. The guard came out of the coal storage and couldn't believe what he was seeing. He was just about to scream and reach for a rope which was attached to an alarm bell when Gilbert knocked him out cold with the coal shovel. The 2 dragons shrank in size and were put into Polly's pockets as Gilbert and Polly dashed up the stone stairs, not knowing what to expect. As they reached ground level, their distraction at the bathhouse had obviously worked, as all the guards were trying to remedy the bathhouse issue that the dragons had created. In the panic, Polly, Gilbert, and the dragons in Polly's pocket made their way to the castle gate, which was shut just before they could get through. Lord Tirith peered from one of the turret windows and ordered the guards to stop Polly. The guards chased Polly and Gilbert around the courtyard and up the stone stairs and into one of the castle's turrets. They were trapped. Being backed into a corner gave them no options. They would have to give themselves up or jump and plummet to the ground. Standing in a stalemate, Lord Tirith made his way up and started weaving through his guards when Polly heard Gordoth.
"Take me out of your pocket, grab Gilbert's hand, and jump."
Are you crazy? I can't fly. It's too high.
"Just trust me."
As Lord Tirith got to the front, he smiled as though the escape attempt was failed and things were going in his favour, but he didn't bank on what happened next. Polly took a leap of faith and grabbed Gilbert's hand, pulling them off of the castle. They plummeted to the ground as gravity was in full force. Simultaneously as they plummeted to the ground, Gordoth grew in size and snatched them out of the air, to which then he flew swiftly upwards before hitting the ground. They soared in the air above the castle and shot off towards the horizon. Glancing backwards at the castle as it shrank into the background, Polly noticed a speck rise above it. Squinting her eyes, her heart fell into her stomach.
I don't think we've got away.
"What do you mean we're putting miles between us and them?"
Look.
Pointing her finger backwards, she showed Gilbert that there was something following them and gaining on them.
What is it?
I don't know, but I'm guessing the Lord really didn't want us getting away. Something's after us.
Gordoth tried his best to put distance between them and the mysterious object, but it grew clearer as they slowed down. Finally, admitting that his stamina was getting low, Gordoth landed near the outskirts of a huge forest and everyone dismounted.
Come on, we can hide in the forest and hopefully evade detection.
Gordoth shrank in size again and went back into Polly's pocket. Gilbert and Polly dashed into the woods and searched for a place to hide.
Over there!
Gilbert found a large hole in the ground, and both he and Polly jumped in it without any hesitation. Luckily, there weren't any creatures in there. Keeping as silent as possible, they felt the earth quiver and heard a huge thud as if something had landed. Then they heard a voice bellow through the trees.
Come out, I know you're here. Let's dispense with the search. Simply come quietly and no one gets hurt. Come.
There was an awkward silence as Polly and Gilbert didn't move and barely breathed. The man sighed with impatience.
Oh, well, we will have to do things the hard way. Let me introduce myself firstly. I am the Lord's first knight, Sir Eckhart, and this is my Lord's dragon, Greenock. Now, Greenock, sniff them out.
Breaking the silence, Polly whispered to Gilbert.
We have to do something. We can't stay here. The dragon will find us.
You have 10 seconds before I give the word.
Gilbert took a huge breath and grabbed Polly's hand.
Let's face this together. He's not the only one with dragons, is he, huh?
Polly nodded and squeezed Gilbert's hand back.
Come on.
Climbing out of the hole, they could hear the knight counting down as they approached him. Walking with an air of caution, the pair came across the elusive knight who was stood in front of a monstrously huge dragon, bigger than both Gordoth and Eliza put together. The knight smiled as if he had already won the battle.
Clever girl. Now come. The Lord wants you in one piece. As for the goblin, it can be incinerated.
No!
As the knight raised his arm about to command Greenock the dragon to incinerate Gilbert, both Gordoth and Eliza burst out of Polly's pocket and exploded to full size, facing the knight and the other dragon.
Looks like we're in a stalemate, doesn't it? I'm quite tired. It's been a long day and I could do without having to take you back in pieces, so surrender now and nobody gets hurt. As a goodwill gesture, I'll let the goblin go.
No deal. None of us are going back.
Have it your way.
The knight drew his sword and readied himself for battle. The night dragon reared up and then, to everyone's surprise, squashed the knight into the earth and stood across from Polly and her troop. The dragon started to speak.
My son, father.
Yes, you guessed it. The mystery dragon was Gordoth's father and Eliza's partner. Polly smiled as they all embraced. After the victory reunion, Polly turned to the rest of the group.
Well, this is why we came here, so what now?
Gilbert stepped forward.
He won't stop until he has you. You know, we have to stop all of this.
He's right.
But how? He has an entire army.
Well, there's others who believe Tirith shouldn't be ruling, and if they see there may be another possibility of change, they might rise up.
It's a big might.
Yes, but it's better than looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life.
An uneasy silence went on for quite some time until Polly broke it.
We have to fight. It's better than being anxious on the run all the time. I've been a prisoner for most of my life, and I'm going to stand for freedom. Let's make a plan. Let's do this. Tirith has an army of 1,000 men, and we have 3 dragons, a goblin, and a human.
We need more recruits.
Well, the creatures of the Outer Lands may be interested in helping.
Outer Lands?
Yes, Tirith exiled anyone who didn't follow his rule and they were forced out.
Right, so we'll have to talk to them.
Well, we'll have to move swiftly, as Tirith will be after you and your blood.
Deciding to venture on in the morning, the team settled down for the night and tried to get some precious sleep in anticipation of their long journey. Upon waking, the group gathered themselves up and set out on a pilgrimage to the Outer Lands to gather up a new army of humans and creatures that didn't want to be under the rule of Lord Tirith. They travelled far and wide for 3 weeks, gathering an anti-Tirith army. Polly had totally forgotten that her birthday had come and gone in the blink of an eye and didn't really pay any attention as she was too busy trying to create a new world and make everyone free. Freedom was the key to their salvation, and they managed to get 300 creatures and humans who wanted to come out of hiding and fight for their right to live a safe, peaceful life without fear or unfair prosecution. The band of creatures came in all shapes and sizes, some extremely small, others extremely tall. Goblins, ogres, fairies, minotaurs, gnomes, and humans, all joining for a common cause: freedom. A camp was made, and all the creatures fashioned weaponry out of whatever they could get their hands on. They made spears from trees and gathered farming tools. Although primitive, they would do the trick. Polly, Gilbert, and the shrunken dragons were in a tent planning their next move when they heard some commotion from outside. Exiting the tent, they could see some of the creatures in a circle trying to restrain someone.
Stop!
Gordoth's voice made them all stop, apart from the suspect they were holding. The group had apprehended someone and brought them to the main tent. Going back inside of the tent, an ogre held the mystery prisoner so he could be questioned. The ogre cleared its throat and spoke.
He is a spy from Lord Tirith. Caught him sneaking around camp. Says he has message for you.
The mystery man thrashed and struggled, trying to free himself from the ogre's vice-like grip as he started to speak.
Release me! I'm of no threat to you. I simply wanted to deliver a message. Look, I hold no weapons. I come in peace here.
Polly nodded to the ogre, who then immediately released the man, who then proceeded to dust himself off.
Lord Tirith wants a truth. He asks for you only, and the other creatures will be spared as a favour. The only bloodshed he requires is yours, and all will be spared. But if you refuse, his army will march upon you and destroy you all.
Gilbert stepped forward.
You think we're going to let the rightful heir to the throne come to harm at the hands of that tyrant? I say let them come. Polly smiled at Gilbert's loyalty as she stepped forward.
Do you honestly think he will stop with me? If he gets immortality from my blood, he will rest at nothing to hunt down every one of us and imprison and destroy us.
The man smiled.
I trust this is your final decision, then. You wish for war? We don't wish for war, but have been forced. I will report back to the Lord, and you will all be overrun by tomorrow. Oh, you have a band of mere, 300? They will be gone in an hour.
Gilbert nodded at the ogre, who then clonked the man on the head, rendering him unconscious.
Right, that gives us a bit more time. We need a plan before he goes back to reporting anything.
The group gathered and sat in a circle inside the tent discussing possible battle plans. After long deliberation, it was decided that they would let the fight come to them and prepare the forest for an all-out war. Briefing the creatures and men, they all set to work making traps and preparing their battleground. The messenger that the Lord had sent was set free and speedily returned to notify his lord of Polly and the creature's intention to fight. The stage was set and the future of the kingdom was unknown. As a new day dawned, Lord Tirith's army had reached the forest with the Lord himself, of course, at the back, safeguarded by his followers. He blew a trumpet to signal his army to attack. On the opposite side, Polly's army were all hidden in the trees and in tunnels underground, ready to ambush and capture Lord Tirith's men. Entering the forest, Lord Tirith's army were unaware of the tricks and traps waiting for them and walked blindly into the fray. Soldiers fell in holes, got hit by logs, tripped over ropes, got tarred and feathered. It really was like walking into a trap. After an hour or so of men walking into all kinds of creative traps, Lord Tirith's army had dwindled and the rest abandoned the fight apart from the Lord and 4 knights. Polly let the dragons out of her pockets, who grew to full size. Upon seeing the dragons, the 4 remaining knights abandoned their master, who was now stood alone. Lord Tirith's eyes were on stalks as he stood in utter disbelief at what had transpired and how quick his army had dwindled.
How is this possible?
Because they're fighting for freedom, and that is priceless. Now I will be taking over the kingdom and will unite the kingdom.
Lord Tirith suddenly bowed his head as if to concede to Polly, then started to cackle.
Oh, you foolish girl, you honestly think that this is over?
Lord Tirith swiftly grabbed a potion from his pocket and drank it.
Grab him!
Before anyone could do anything, the Lord began to transform into a giant. Polly ran for cover, diving into a hole in the ground and crawled through a series of underground tunnels. All she could hear above was the menacing noise of the Lord's ranting and ravings.
Come out and face me, you cowards!
Polly popped her head out of the hole and could see the Lord, so she crawled a little further and then snuck out and sprinted further into the forest. The deeper she went, the darker and more twisted the surrounding landscape got. She could faintly hear the Lord in the background as she sprinted further away so she could reassess the situation and come up with another plan. Glancing backwards whilst running at full pelt, she ran into a small wooden hut. She dizzily fell to the floor and passed out. In the darkness of her mind, the events of the last few days spiraled through her mind, and then consciousness began to return, and she fluttered her eyes open. She noticed a small old lady standing next to a small fire.
Now then, dearie, you hit your head pretty hard, didn't you? And on my hat, nonetheless. Practically knocked a chunk of wood out of the side of the door. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Let's get you some soup. I can't. I'm in a battle.
Battle?
Yes, it's a long story. It's Lord Tirothy.
Ooh, yuck. Ooh, I ought to wash your mouth out with soap. Don't speak his name in here. He is a foul creature.
Well, he's now a giant and won't stop until he finds me. I need to stop him, but I don't know how.
Ooh, a giant, you say?
Well, I'd give him a shrinking potion. Shrinking potion?
Yes, that's what I do.
Shrink him down. Yes, shrink him down. I don't have one.
Well, I can make one, but I'm missing one ingredient.
What?
A crushed green emerald.
Polly's eyes lit up as she dragged the ring she found off of her finger.
Here you are.
The small woman took the ring and nodded swiftly, getting to work on a shrinking potion.
Now then, bat's wing, in you go. Crushed green emerald. They're a little bit tough to crush, dearie. That should do. Soot, frog's legs, mouse's tail, oregano, dog hair, ogre sweat, dragon scale, and witch's spit. Sorry about that, dearie. There we are, dearie. Now make sure he drinks the entire confection.
Pouring the potion into a small glass vial, the witch handed it over to Polly, who clasped it to her chest and thanked the witch and went on her way. Walking in the direction of the lunatic tyrant, who was now a giant, Polly trod carefully and knew what she had to do to stop the pure pandemonium. She was prepared to sacrifice herself to stop the Lord. Hiding behind the trees, she could see the tyrant lord smashing down trees looking for Polly. He would stop at nothing to rule and become immortal.
Come out, Polly, and all this destruction can stop.
The 3 dragons flew up to take on Lord Tirith themselves, but they were tiny in comparison to the giant. They battled as much as they could, breathing fire and trying to use their claws, but nothing seemed to be effective. Swinging his ginormous fists, Lord Tirith hit the dragons out of the air as if they were little flies annoying him. Polly decided she had had enough and stepped out from behind a tree to face Lord Tirith. She didn't quite know what would happen, but she needed to do something.
Stop!
The moment the words vibrated into the giant's ears, he stopped, turned and looked down at the tiny person and bent over and scooped her up, clasping her tight in his fist. Not saying a word, Lord Tirith set out back to his kingdom with Polly in hand. He knew he had to study her blood to gain what he desired, immortality. Polly couldn't move no matter how much she struggled and squirmed. She was well and truly trapped and a prisoner once again. Looking backwards, she could see Gordoth the dragon trying his best to keep up with them in hopes he would be able to rescue Polly. They arrived at the kingdom where Lord Tirith smashed down a few of the villagers' stalls and stood bringing Polly to his face.
I told you this wasn't over, and now you'll do as I say.
Polly's face screwed up as she replied whilst being squeezed.
Do you think this is over?
The Lord smiled and started to laugh, which is exactly what Polly wanted. She managed to free her arm with the witch's shrinking potion in it and tossed the vial down the Lord's throat, to which he began to choke and dropped Polly to the ground. As she plummeted to the ground, she smiled, knowing the evil Lord's plan was foiled. And then, just before she hit the ground, Gordoth had caught up and snatched Polly out of the air. They both watched from the sky as the Lord Tirith shrank down to normal size. Gordoth had had enough and decided he would finish the battle once and for all. He flew over the Lord and breathed fire towards him, making the Lord run for his life. He ran into the castle in hopes he could gain some sort of protection. Meanwhile, Eliza, Gordoth's mother, flew up to meet Polly and Gordoth with Gilbert on her back with a wooden club in his hand. They both landed and set after Lord Tirith. Searching the castle brought them to a tower where the door was locked.
He has to be in here.
Smashing the door down, they ascended the stairs, and there stood Lord Tirith with a sword in his hand, waiting to fight whoever tried to stop him. Gilbert knew the Lord wasn't a swordsman, as he usually would have guards do his dirty work, so used the club to knock the sword from his hands. Falling to his knees, the Lord was finally defeated and would be taken to the dungeon, and his rule was well and truly over. They would now have to start the process of rebuilding the kingdom, with Polly as the new queen. Taking Lord Tirith as a prisoner, they made a quest to then unite everyone, and Polly would go from being the unknown to the known, the rightful heir to the throne, where she could restore balance and change the kingdom for the better. She would welcome everyone with open arms and guard the people's rights of freedom and happiness till the end of her days. Thank you so much for your support and listening to The Unknown Princess. If you would like another adventure, please leave a comment below and tell me if you would like Polly to venture forth once again.